When I applied to UPenn's social work program this year, I began my essay with the following statement. While many of my rabbinic classmates pursued ordination to master Jewish legal coding, I sought the rabbinate primarily for its insights into the evolution of human thought and feeling, specifically in response to suffering. In fact, I believe religion derived from the very human need to cope in a world that was and continues to be laden with anguish beyond comprehension. This year's Passover validated this sentiment for me. I resonated deeply with an article from the Times of Israel entitled, "For many Israelis, this Passover, celebrating the festival of freedom feels impossible." And I know I was not alone in this. My Moroccan-Israeli father-in-law began our Seder saying how hard it would be for him to get through the evening with what felt like a rock weighing on his chest. Family members, congregants, and colleagues have each confided in me, saying, "How am I going to celebrate Passover this year? How can I celebrate freedom when not all of us have it?" Recently, I've started reading a book called Love's Executioner, written by Dr. Irvin Yalom, a psychotherapist who shares the mysteries, frustrations, and pathos at the heart of therapy. In his introduction, he implies what I agree to be true, that much of human suffering is a result of avoidance, avoiding fears of death and dying, the limitations of human freedom and control, responsibility, and difficult feelings like loneliness. It wasn't until I began reading this book that I realized the power of Passover during a year like this one. Engaging in the Seder feels impossible because it forces us to confront pain, death, missing hostages, the depths of human cruelty, and the question of our responsibility in an unfolding war. But it is this confrontation brought to us by our rich tradition that actually aims to soothe suffering. In fact, to avoid the Seder and the holiday would be to cause further agony. Though this year feels as if we are acutely less free, and in many ways the Jewish people are, as I said, Israel is missing many of its citizens, others are dying at war to protect the country, and Jews in America are facing increased rates of anti-Semitism. We are, in some ways, as equally unfree as we are each year. We do not just read the Haggadah to remember a forlorn past. We use the Haggadot to reflect on freedoms we lack in the present, because there is always a type of freedom we are lacking, whether it be imposed by another human being or a self-imposed affliction. Our ancestors have utilized Passover rituals, including the telling of the Exodus narrative, as a tool for psychological processing of their own circumstances since the very origin of the Seder. We see their grappling detailed in the art and literature of Haggadot from medieval Europe to the establishment of Kibbutz Be'eri. I believe Passover this year feels particularly challenging, not only because of the political climate, but also because our ability to engage in dialogue has atrophied. We in our country have retreated from confrontation, whether with ourselves or with others, and we have left little space for nuance and complexity. And especially for Jews, society has robbed us of outlets where we can share our full and dynamic opinions. Instead, others presume what we believe or project beliefs onto us that further their cause. We've seen this most recently and perhaps most egregiously on college campuses. Universities have failed us. Yesterday, I read an article in The Atlantic by George Packer, who opines on the pitfalls of universities, who are, he writes, caught in a trap of their own making. He continues, ideas born in the 60s, subsequently refined and complicated by critical theory, post-colonial studies, and identity politics, are now so pervasive and unquestioned that they've become the instincts of students who are occupying the campuses today. Group identity assigns your place in a hierarchy of oppression between oppressor and oppressed, No room exists for complexity and ambiguity. What the universities haven't done, he argues, is train their students to talk with one another. Instead, people join a camp often parroting ideologies they may not even understand, let alone believe, verbally attacking Jewish students and professors alike, restricting their access to school without a word left from their mouths. And the result is more pain, more conflict, more divisive groups. Recently, my Facebook feed has been flooded with colleagues virtually journaling about the feelings that Passover evoked for them this year. Many of them expressed their frustration with society's unwillingness to let them hold multiple truths. One colleague, Rabbi Emily Aronson, wrote in her reflections, "When we broke the middle matzah tonight, I thought, that's me, the broken matzah. I've been broken and crumbled and hidden and kneaded to the point I'm not sure I can be made whole again." She asked herself, what has been making me feel so broken? To which she retorted, everything. I'm tired of people claiming to speak for me when they have no idea what I'm actually thinking. I'm tired of assumptions, the rhetoric, the sides, the abuses of power, and the lack of power. I was equally as struck by another colleague's post, that of Rabbi Aaron Brusso, which Rabbi Blake reposted on his Facebook wall with the accompanying commentary. If you read nothing else this Passover, read this. Rabbi Brusso wrote, I will be thinking a lot this year about the fifth child, the one who tries to hold complexity, the one who does not want to let go of their heritage and loyalties, and also wants to understand and sympathize with the pain of others, even the pain caused to others by those to whom she feels loyalty. The child who opens her mouth and nothing comes out, because the cry of love for her people's suffering is stuck, wedged in her throat against the cry for empathy for the suffering of others. She holds this all in her heart as she walks past the cries from the different camps of encampments for freedom, justice. She wants to love her neighbor and the stranger, but neither are interested in loving her. She has no camp amongst the encampments. She went to university so she could make space in her mind between the certainties and grow intellectually, to build rooms in her heart to grow emotionally. Instead, she found camps on campus. Passover is unique in that it gives us this very space to hold such complexities, but it is up to us to lean in. In his preparations for the MRJ Seder, Cantor Sonnet Asor wrote the following beautiful reflection. Our tradition cautions us, he said, not to harden our hearts as the tyrant Pharaoh once did. Rather, we pray, Patach libenu, open our hearts. Torah teaches, Chizku ve'imsu, be strong and have courage in the face of danger. Do not let our hearts grow soft with fear. Almost paradoxically, it takes great strength to maintain an open heart. The 2021 CCAR Haggadah reminds us that our redemption did not come without suffering. Our sages taught at the very hour that the Egyptians were drowning. The angels wanted to sing before the Holy Blessed One. God said to them, my children are drowning in the sea, and yet you would sing in my presence? And so we make drops of wine for their blood that spilled for the sake of our redemption. And I'll add, we eat the Korach sandwich with the sweetness and the bitterness. We understand that each of us is a mixture of the four children, filled with wisdom, rebellion, simplicity, and bewilderment all at once. Perhaps the most profound commandment of the Seder is Bechol dor vador chayav adam lacharot et atzmo, ki'ilu hu ba'atzmo yatsa ata mishibud Mitzrayim. In each and every generation, a person must retell the story, as if they themselves left the slavery of Egypt. We do not recount the Exodus solely to remember the slavery of the past, but also to confront, process, and change the slaveries of the present and future. Because to forget is to avoid, and to avoid is to deepen the inevitable suffering of life. So though the Seders are done, we have the counting of the Omer, which we'll do together in just a moment. which has evolved into a spiritual practice that helps us continue utilizing Passover to process our present, as if to more fully and extensively experience the journey out of Egypt. It was not one day or even two. It took time. It took conflict and wrestling, complexity, confusion, faith, lack of faith, and back to faith again. So I hope for all of us that we can use these next 45 days of counting the Omer to continue drawing lessons and realizations from Passover, to create spaces where we can freely think, feel, converse, and debate, to create the outlets our society and universities have failed to foster, places where we can love Israel, support its fight for freedom and existence, even wrestle with its policies as we do here in the United States, where we can be proud to be Jewish, express anger for being dragged into an unwanted war, anger that others ignore or worse, deny our plight, anger at our politicians who take advantage of the situation, anger that Israel is under a microscope almost no other country or people ever encounter, and in the same breath, acknowledge the pain and fear of innocent Palestinians, the dying and the verge of famine, to create spaces to face the avoidance, where we can do the Herculean work that our Jewish tradition demands of us, of being vessels that hold it all, because only maybe then we can actually move through the suffering.